Yes, thank you, Chairperson. Yes,
Dr.
Chair, thank you very much.
Are you good? Gareth, are you good?
I'm strong, Chair. Thank you very much for asking.
Hello? No, it's okay. I see you're all here. Good morning, DM. Deputy Minister Tumela.
Morning, Chairperson.
Sawubona, awusithembeka. Okay, let me confirm. Honorable Weber, good morning, you are here. Honorable Bryant, good morning, you are here. Do my roll call, ne?
Yes.
Is it Honorable Kappa here today? Yes. I'm not wrong, ne? Honorable Kappa? It's not the Honorable Kappa who's here. I'm checking. Honorable.
He's in the meeting, Chair.
Yes. Honorable Gancho, good morning.
Good morning, Chair.
Good morning, Chair. Good morning, Chair.
I was worried because I'm greeting your colleague. Oh, thank you.
Good morning,
Good
Chair.
to have you here. Thank you. Honorable Mbata, Dumel.
So, Chair.
Yeah. Okay, we are all here and it's a full house. Whom did I miss? Do we have apologies, Shileka, except for the one of the minister?
Yes, Chair. Yes. Honorable Phillips is traveling. Honorable Paulson is traveling. Honorable Singh is attending another meeting, but will join as soon as he's finished on that side.
Oh, it's the one that is ending at 12:15.
Yes, yes.
And
then Minister and Gift.
What's wrong with them? Gift is in hospital, right?
Yes,
I
yes.
saw he posted something on Facebook. And
yes.
He had an operation. We wish him a speedy recovery. I think the team from DFFE will convey our well wishes to him, DG.
And Mr. Mutise, sorry, Chair. Mr. Mutise as well.
Has got a bereavement. The cousin brother is being buried tomorrow. So those are the apologies that we have. Yes, then let me then welcome all of you who are here. Indeed, I'm glad the number of the Sunpack team that is here, because ideally, like we've done with the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area Program, we managed to ask Sunpack as an implementing agent to present, including the relevant provincial departments, which were Limpopo and Mpumalanga. Having seen that this is a number of them, I think we're going to get 5 presentations on the 5 ones. We realize that it's high time that only the department can today then present in all of them. Then in the next quarter, we'll find time wherein we're going to get the detailed progress report from both Sunpacks, Isimangaliso, and Ais-Richterveld, because those 3 are implementing agents of all these other 5, and then including the relevant provincial departments. That means your Northwest Province, your Free State Province, your Mpumalanga again Province, and Limpopo. Whom did I omit? And the KZN Province. So in the next term, we'll try to schedule those meetings. Like you'll recall, colleagues, what sparked our meeting today. It was the thorough, detailed presentations we got from both the departments, Sunpacks, and those 2 provincial departments that we interacted with last time. So I should think this is what we are going to deal with that, because this issue of before that, let's adopt the agenda. Sorry, let's adopt the agenda. Yeah, the agenda is as follows. You see it. Can I get a mover and a seconder?
Thank you, Chair. I move for the adoption of the agenda.
You're moving in numbers. Honorable Bryant and Honorable Gancho, and then seconded by Honorable Mkono. Am I wrong? The hand is up to second.
Yes, Chair, the hand is up for support.
Thank you so
much. Thank you.
Thank you so much, dear colleagues. So then the agenda is adopted. And then I was still trying to say that we both know that conservation is a social and political process in achieving the on-the-ground conservation that will require working with our local communities to achieve the desired outcome. What interests us, because all these Transfrontier conservation area, most of them are in the borderlines with the neighboring countries. And then the rationale behind the establishment of this, as we have dealt it when we're dealing with the greater Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area. This was made just to deal with the issue of the pro-poor conservation. And then these issues, these areas are supposed to then deal with these pro-poor conservation programs. And then that when they do that, then that there will always be community-based natural resources and management, and then the community also participate in the natural management programs that is called community conservation. So today we are continuing with that because we are with the view that these transfrontier conservation areas are relatively large tracts of land straddling frontiers between two or more countries, and which embrace natural systems encompassing one or more protected areas. And then what this means, colleagues, based on what was presented to us in the past, is that these trans-frontier conservation areas extend beyond national parks and game reserves, integrating mostly, it will be private land, forest reserves, game management area, and then sustainable resource utilization areas where consumptive uses occur and may include communal lands. I believe that we are all aware that all of this conservation-related intervention stands to secure more in terms of rural poverty eradication through both consumptive and non-consumptive use of natural resources. Our biggest issue here, as we know, the mandate of this administration is to fight inequality, poverty, and unemployment. We as the committee, we see these Transfrontier conservation areas programs that will then offer opportunities for poverty relief. It can happen through tourism, especially as nature-based and cultural tourism is the fastest growing industry in the Southern African region. It is a leading job creator of all industries within the Southern African Development Community. And then we all know that nature-based tourism is a non-consumptive way of using natural resources to benefit rural people. The Peace Parks Foundation that facilitates the establishment of these Transfrontier conservation areas in the Southern Africa considers Transfrontier conservation as the way forward for addressing unemployment in Southern Africa, especially through tourism. The Transfrontier conservation areas have broader tourism opportunities and experiences than single component national parks or other forms of protected areas. And then the thing that we see out of this, having read the literature, you find that there are 3 types of tourism-based employment. That is direct employment in hotels and restaurants. The colleagues from the Sun Parks will attest to that. And then indirect employment in local transport. Handicrafts, you normally see it around those parks. Then communications and banks, and then it also has to deal with induced employment arising from increased expenditure of tourism income by local residents. For example, this has got an impact on the increased standard of living of local residents, because the majority of them, they are employed by nature-based tourism industry, and then at least they can see a better life in the sense that it will cause them to take their children to creches or also hire childminders, domestic workers, and gardeners, amongst others. And in so doing, they will be then creating employment. Then the other issue that one want to raise as we'll be dealing with this presentation, we will all know, agree with each other that these transfrontier conservation areas play other multifaceted roles in addition to poverty relief. These other roles include improvement in natural resource management and biodiversity conservation, reunification of divided ethnicities, and promotion of a culture of peace and regional cooperation. Although, colleagues, the reunification of divided ethnic groups into different countries within South African region and promotion of culture of peace and regional cooperation are important, the primary natural resource management and biodiversity conservation, at least in our part of the Transfrontier conservation area. This is why we are here for today, and we expect to be briefed on whether the bottom line of natural resource management and biodiversity conservation is being met or not. It will be just a teaser for today, because it's only the department that will do that. As and when we progress, as I've alluded earlier, then we'll allow the implementing agents, being Sun Parks, Ecological, and whom am I missing? Ismangaliso, to do the presentations. Having said that, then let me welcome all of you. Honorable Brian, your hand is up. It's an old hand, I suspect.
No, Chairperson, just a very brief one, if you'd allow me, just to bring to the attention of the committee that yesterday was World Wildlife Day. And I think it's very pertinent that we're having this presentation today on the Transfrontier areas and what you mentioned in your speech around finding ways to promote conservation tourism so that we can conserve our wildlife and promote economic opportunities in tourism through that and keep it a focus. So just to
recording in progress.
And to note that yesterday was World Wildlife Day. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much for that valid input. While you are still also there, because I suspect we won't have time, colleagues, you might have learned in the group that we have lost Mr. Simon Mbata. You remember, it's alleged that immediately after our meeting on the 18th with him, then the following day, he disappeared. They couldn't trace him for 4 days. Until then, he was found dead. Immediately when we learned about the news, we then issued a statement And then I'm glad also the ministry yesterday also issued the statement. I happened to just attend, I just saw it on the network of the UWC network. Then we're in the CSAR and the Research Foundation, they were hosting a seminar, a webinar yesterday on waste. And then one was so humbled by the number of tributes that were coming out of him being a champion on the zero waste issues. I think as a committee, we have issued a statement. We will be sending the heartfelt condolences to the family. I've spoken to the wife as well yesterday by telephone to convey our heartfelt condolences to the family. So that's the matter that I think we need to still continue to be with the family as they are preparing to bury him next week, Saturday, that is the 12th. So heartfelt condolences to the Bata family and the entire waste sector in which he was a champion. Then may his soul rest in peace. Having said that, can I then hand over to you, DM Sochu, to do an overview, and then you'll hand over to the team, Sunpark teams. I need to appreciate you are coming to the meeting. At least then you'll be able to understand what our attitude is, so that as and when then your time comes, then at least you'll be privileged to have heard what the members are saying on these matters. Over to you, DM.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson, and good morning to you again, and morning to members of Parliament, and also to the team from the department, the team from Sunparks, and especially the team from the BNC, that is the branch within the department which is responsible for this area. Chairperson, you have summarized it so well. I don't even want to spoil it. I think even a person who didn't understand what is meant by the TFCAs, you put it so well. We without any waste of time, I'm not going to take your time, but one thing that I would like then to indicate is that the management of the parks who are here today, they will then also give more information as you have indicated, and also responded to some questions that may be raised by members of Parliament when that time arrives. But as for me now, Chair, I can give over to DDG, but I'm not sure whether the DG is here. I was trying to look through the...
She's here. She's here.
Oh, all right, because I was trying to look through the participants. I don't see her. Oh, there she is. Thank you very much, Chair. Then without any waste of time, can I then give over to DG so that she can just tell us who is going to do what, where, when? Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Thank you very much.
Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, DM, and thank you, Chairperson and honorable members. Chairperson, I think we have prepared a presentation which will cover the 5 areas, and the DDG, Ms. Flora, is going to be taking the committee through those areas. Chair, we are definitely going to, in line with the elaboration of the interest of the committee, going to go into detail for the future engagement in as far as the TFCAs are concerned. And we do have information which will talk to the various objectives, what have been the successes and also what have been the challenges that we have faced. And we will expand on that in the future engagement, working together with the implementing management authorities. I will now therefore hand over to the DDG to take the committee through the 5 areas which we have prepared for the committee for the discussion today. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Maybe for the benefit of colleagues, you might have realized last night there was another presentation resubmitted. And then I had to raise it with the DDG consent to say, the earlier presentation contained the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area. Then I've indicated to the DDG consent to say, we have already dealt with that. And I suspect it was prior to your arrival to the new responsibilities. There's no changes. Then I asked them to remove the issues that had to deal with the Greater Limpopo one, as we've already dealt with that in detail. That was the issue. Just to allay the fear of the members when the presentation was again recent. It's just that I got so busy during the day. As and when I was going through it later, that's when I picked up that this stuff that is being repeated. Then I directed that Chaleka talk to the department to remove the Greater Limpopo one, as we thoroughly dealt with earlier. Over to you, TDG.
Morning, Deputy Minister, DG and colleagues. I checked earlier whether my sound is okay, Chair. In case it's not okay, I will switch the devices because I know we've had challenges previously. If the committee can indulge me, I'm going to request that I switch off the camera and then I continue with the presentation.
Okay,
Thank
proceed.
you. So if we can move to the next slide, thank you very much. So essentially, just to provide a context, an introduction to say that international boundaries were set without taking into consideration the ecosystem boundaries. And therefore, the effect of that is that basic natural ecosystems into unsustainable components, which are restricted to the movement of wildlife tourists, and then compromising the well-being and resilience of ecosystems, incompatible management systems across the board. So that's essentially the restrict nature, the movement of people, etc. However, the benefits of Tfca essentially is to restore ecosystem and enable the free movement of wildlife and tourists, the development and implementation of joint management where between two countries or more, we can put in joint operation strategies, and then also establishment of joint governance structures, enabling participation of relevant authorities. And obviously, the governance structures will have to meet on a regular basis, and I'll share with you the various management structures that are in place and the frequencies that meet on. And then the synchronization of wildlife management activities and approaches such as game counting, fire management, the translocation of animals, etc. The development of critical infrastructure in Tfcas, which includes construction of roads or improvement of roads, forest access facilities, and other associated infrastructure. Next slide, please. Continuing with that, in respect to the regional context, we know that the SADC Treaty was signed in 1992 and basically aims to promote regional integration of the SADC region. And it recognizes the value of member states cooperating also in the areas of natural resources and environment. And there is a protocol on wildlife law enforcement that was developed in 1992. Which defines a transfrontier conservation area as the area or the component of a large ecological region that straddles the boundaries of two or more countries and encompassing one or more protected areas as well as multiple resource use areas. The protocol also includes the principle of cooperation among member states to manage shared wildlife resources as well as any transfrontier effect of activities within their jurisdiction or control. And therefore, the protocol makes provision for the promotion of the conservation of shared wildlife resources through the establishment of DFCAs. Next slide, please. Continue on the regional context. The African Convention on Conservation of Nature and Natural Resources of the African Union, which is also known as the Maputo Convention in 1968, and it was revised and adopted again in 2017 March. It provides a legal framework for the establishment of mechanisms for transboundary management of natural resources, such as DFCAs in Africa. And it says that whenever a natural resource or an ecosystem is transboundary, parties consent shall undertake to cooperate in the conservation, development, and management of such resource or ecosystem, and that if the need arises, set up interstate commissions for the conservation, for their conservation and sustainable use. Next slide, please. So therefore, the legal mandate within which we operate is that the foundation for the establishment, development, and management of TFCAs is the protocol, SADC Protocol on Wildlife and Law Enforcement, Article 4.2f, which states that to promote the conservation of shared wildlife resources through the establishment of TFCAs. And then in terms of the South African Constitution, DFFE therefore has a mandate to enter into an international agreement to establish TFCAs. Next slide, please. So essentially, the objective of TFCAs is threefold: from an ecological, socio-economic, and governance perspective, and in respect of ecological.
Your problem is starting again, Flora.
Okay, thanks, Chairperson. I will quickly then change. Should I change? Can I change devices?
Yeah, change the devices and let's see. It's like you do better with your cell phone.
Okay, I'm going to change devices quickly.
Recording in progress.
Am I then audible now? Chairperson?
Yes, you are now. You are.
Okay. Thank you very much. So
yes,
continue.
You are very audible.
Okay, thank you. So I was just going through the objectives of TFCAs, which are indicated as threefold, and I was still on the ecological objectives, which is about re-establishing ecological functions of previously disrupted by limitations of opposing land uses and management principles across the borders, and also to re-establish seasonal migration routes for wildlife and to harmonize environmental management procedures across the international boundaries, and also to contribute to the expansion of conservation estate. At a socio-economic level is basically to promote growth of the tourism sector, especially cross-border tourism, to create employment in geographically remote areas with limited employment opportunities, thereby serving as nodes of rural development in relation to tourism-related SMMEs, and to promote cultural linkages between countries in the region, as we know that people are linked by borders. From a governance perspective, is basically to deepen regional integration and cooperation, and to promote peace, harmony, and enhance law enforcement. Then this map starts to provide you with where our Transfrontier conservation areas are. We have Ais-Richterveld TFCA, which on the western coast in the Northern Cape at the southern border of Namibia, which was established in 2003. And then we have the Khalakhadi Transfrontier Park, which is in Botswana, and southern Botswana, and the northern parts of the Northern Cape provinces in South Africa. that was established in 1999. That was the first TFCA that we've had in Africa. And then we have the Greater Mapungubwe, which then borders with Botswana, South Africa, and Zimbabwe, that is on the northern parts of South Africa, established in 2006. And then we have the GLTFCA, which, Chair, as you indicated, we have previously received a comprehensive presentation in respect of that. And then that includes Mozambique, South Africa, and Zimbabwe. And then we have the Lubambo TFCA, which basically includes a portion with Eswatini and South Africa, that is in Mpumalanga. And then the three other portions of Lubambo are actually in northern KwaZulu-Natal, south of Eswatini, and south of Mozambique, including some portions of Ais-Richterveld Wetland Park. And then we have the Maloti-Drakensberg, which essentially borders with Lesotho on the northeastern parts of Lesotho, the western parts of KwaZulu-Natal provinces, and a portion of the Free State. Then the next slide then starts to show you, to give an orientation of each TFCA in the countries involved, as I mentioned earlier on, in the status of the bilateral agreement. Just to emphasize that, and also the status of each agreement. On Khalakhadi, currently there's no need for a new treaty. The GLTFCA, the treaty was signed in 2002 by the heads of state. On the II, the treaty was signed in 2003, also by the heads of states. Maloti-Drakensberg TFCA, the MOU was signed in 2001 and updated in 2008 by the ministers. And currently, Lesotho has indicated the possible need to sign a treaty. The Lubambo TFCA, the protocol was signed in 2002, and currently there is no need for a treaty. And the Greater Mapungubwe TFCA, the MOU was signed in 2006 by ministers, and we are currently in consultation in drafting a treaty. Just to then indicate that for each TFCA, we have implementing management authorities. Khalakhadi is southern SANPAX, working with the Northern Cape provinces, and Chair to indicate that SANPAX is in the room for any further details that may be related to that. Same with Greater Limpopo TFCA, it's still SANPAX with Limpopo, and then Ais-Richterveld is still SANPAX together with the Northern Cape, and Maloti-Drakensberg TFCA, and there's a portion, as I indicated, that is within KZN, and Ais-Richterveld KZN is also in the room. They are the implementing management agency, and I'm sure they can provide further details related to that. Then the Greater Mapungubwe, it's SANPAX still, and they are also in the room. And then Lubambo, Songemvelo, Maloti. Excuse me?
Is Ais-Richterveld here?
Ais-Richterveld, yes, it's here. Mr. Padima is in the room.
Nobody gave me a sign. I shouldn't like I'm discriminating. Okay, it's fine. Welcome, Mr. Padima.
Yes, Mr. Padima is in the room. We had provided the names to Secretariat Chairperson. We are still following up because it seems we don't have our colleagues from Mpumalanga Parks and Tourism Agency. So we're just following up now to see whether they can still join us.
God, it was of yourselves from the department. You hear? That's why I was excited to see the colleagues from Kruger. I was able to pick them up. It's like we are interacting with them more often, like yourself, Laura.
I understand, Chair. Can I finish, Chair, now? Then the last one is the Lubombo Ponta do Oro Kosi Bay. That is Ismangaliso Wetland Park Authority working with Ais-Richterveld. I'm not sure if my colleagues from Ismangaliso are in the room. Then continuing on to the next slide. The institutional structures that then drive the core work that is being done with respect to these TFCAs includes a ministerial committee, which basically provide overall policy oversight and guidance and monitoring thereof of the TFCA, and they meet once a year. We also have a bilateral technical committee, or otherwise referred to as the Joint Management Board, which is responsible for developing action plans for the TFCA management and translating the directives of the Ministerial Committee into operational guidelines. And then we also have the technical committee. The bilateral technical committee meet biannually, and the technical committee, which is at PAC level, it meets quarterly, and basically is established on request to make full use of existing national and regional know-how to address the thematic issues that are referred to, such as tourism, security, wildlife, scientific management, community development, etc. And then within the SADC Secretariat, there's an allocated project coordinator for TFCAs to promote efficiency, coordination, and accountability in TFCA planning and development processes. And then there's a coordinating party, which is basically a country, which on a rotational basis of 2 years, which is held accountable for routine initiation of meetings and achieving the overall coordination of activities relating to management activities in the TFCAs. And then we have the implementing agencies such as Parks or Ais-Richterveld or KZN in our case, or even Mpumalanga Parks and Tourism Agency. And then within DEF, obviously the branched biodiversity and conservation coordinates the work of these implementing management agencies. Next slide. Other national government departments are also involved, as we know. So basically, as DFFE, we are responsible for coordinating the establishment, the development, and oversight management of TFCAs. We have DERCO, that is then responsible for our foreign policy, as we know, and international developments, and then they provide advice in that respect. Then we have the Department of Home Affairs, which basically support matters related to border control, immigration and immigration. And then we have the National Department of Tourism, which then provides support in respect of tourism development aspect of the TFCA. And then we have SAPS and SADF that are responsible for safety and security measures along the borderline and the border post, and SARS, which is responsible for customs clearance, and the provinces where we have this implementing agency, implementing management agency, as indicated. Thank you. Then going on to the first TFCA of interest, which is the Khalakhadi Transfrontier Park, which is 3.7 million hectares in extent. And 27% of that is in South Africa, within the Kgalagadi National Park. And the remainder is then in Botswana. That is about 73% is in Botswana. And the map then starts to show you the location of Khalakhadi Transfrontier Park. Continuing on to the details of the Khalakhadi Transfrontier Park. So the agreement was signed in 1999, and this one is actually the first Transfrontier Park that was established in Africa. And the bilateral agreement was signed in October 2011. And currently Botswana is the coordinating country. And some of the projects and programs that are running within the Khalakhadi Transfrontier Park is the fact that they have a component which is a contractual park with sun parks. There is a lodge, the Shao Lodge, which is owned by the Komani, Sam and Mia communities within the park itself. and they have been provided with assistance for solar conversion of the lodge itself in this financial year 2020-2021. And our EPIP branch are running a biodiversity economy project on the Erin game farm of the Kwamanism and near communities on the South African side. And there has been tourism marketing support to this community in terms of campaigns such as the Khalakhadi 2020 campaign, which was a social media campaign. There's also a marketing outfit, which is called Boundless Southern Africa. That is currently we are moving it to the SADC Tfca unit to continue with its activities. And also there's a Heritage Heroes program, and also Beyond the Lockdown, which are social campaigns, social media campaigns, basically to reignite tourism within the Khalakhadi Transfrontier Park. Moving on to the next slide, just to confirm that the countries involved is us, the South African, Botswana, and the status of the agreement and the fact that there's no need for a treaty, and that Botswana is currently the coordinating country and we are next in line to be the coordinator. Then moving on to the next TFCA, which is the Maloti-Drakensberg Transfrontier program. And this one straddles the borders of Lesotho as indicated and includes two of our provinces, which is the Free State and the KwaZulu-Natal province. It's just over 8,000 square kilometers in extent, and 64% of this is in Lesotho, in Setlabatebe and Tsetlanyane, and 36% is in South Africa, which then includes Drakensbeck Protected Area, Kulfas Nature Reserve, Golden Gate Highlands, which is owned by Sandparks, and then Sterkfontein, the Insilo Nature Reserve, and Ongeleke-Snack. Those are the portions that are involved also, are included also. Then to confirm that in actual fact, it's three provinces that are included in the Maloti-Drakensberg Transfrontier on the north, Free State on the middle portion, which is the KwaZulu-Natal, and on the south will then be the Eastern Cape province involved. But Ais-Richterveld KZN is the main implementing agent for this one. Then this next map then just tries to show the details related to Maloti-Drakensberg Transfrontier program and the extent of that, which is quite a very expansive area, as you can see indicated on the map, and largely straddling the eastern borders of Lesotho and the western borders of the KwaZulu-Natal provinces. And I'm sure that the Management Authority will then go into details in respect of the extent of Maloti-Drakensberg Transfrontier program. Next slide, which I was referring to. I think you went back. We have as controlling the screen. Please scroll down. Thank you. Yes, this was the map that I was referring to that then shows the details of Maloti-Drakensberg Transfrontier program. We can then continue on to the next slide, just in respect of further details regarding this program, is that the MOU was signed in 2001 and it was amended in 2008. And obviously Lesotho has indicated the need for a treaty, and we are currently consulting in respect of a treaty, and currently there is no lead coordinating country in order to also undertake the co-management function. But part of these discussions that we are having is then to start to identify, to agree on a coordinating country between ourselves and Lesotho. And the program in its current, the programs that are currently, that have been facilitated to date, these are largely community-oriented initiatives within the three provinces. On the South African side, basically including the distribution of fire management equipment, training to communities in Qwaqwa in the Free State, Imweni in KwaZulu-Natal, and communities within the Matatiele local municipality in the Eastern Cape. And further community was also provided to the Batlokwa community in Qwaqwa through the rehabilitation of the community-owned Hook Mountain Resort through the EP program, as well as working with the community in the establishment of the Hook Community Conservation Area, which is now ready for declaration through the provincial department in the Free State. Then continuing also to indicate further support that was provided to Maswazini community in the Upper Utugela area in KZN in grazing management and organizing cattle auctions to encourage the sale of livestock. And that the MDTP in partnership with other stakeholders, they also provided similar support within the Matatiele local municipality. And also there's been development of critical infrastructure that links Lesotho and South Africa through the upgrading of Sunny Park to Mogotlong Road. As we know that previously that was a very difficult road to navigate, and that the opening of that road has really opened a number of socio-economic development opportunities and the connection between South Africa and Lesotho in that part of the country. And also there's been a development of a cross-border trail between Hook and Afri-Ski Resort. That is also being planned to before the end of this financial year. I take it that if it is the financial year, that will be in the next month, this month. And then there's also been tourism marketing support for the Maloti-Drakensberg Tourism Working Group from Boundless Southern Africa that has involved 4x4 adventure, Heritage Heroes Again, and social media campaign, and tourism packaging and SMME development to support that. Next slide, please. And then this slide is just to summarize the countries involved, being Lesotho and South Africa, and to confirm the status of the agreement that we are currently consulting on the treaty and that there is no coordinating country. Once we've concluded on the treaty, there will be agreement on the coordinating country, and we'll make the necessary arrangements through our governance mechanism for the signing of the treaty. Next slide, please. Is the Ais-Richterveld Transfrontier Park, and our colleagues from SANParks are in the room and they can provide further details. As you can see in the map indicated, this straddles the Northern Cape, the northwestern parts of the Northern Cape province and the southern part of Namibia. It is just over 6,000 square kilometers in extent, and 31% of that is in South Africa, with 69% being within the Namibia in the Hot Springs National Park. And the map then shows the location of this particular Tfca. Continuing in respect of the details of that, the MOU was signed by the ministers in 2000 and the treaty in 2003, and Namibia is presently the coordinating country. The Richterveld National Park is actually a contractual park that is owned by the Richterveld Community Property Association. And there's been collaboration with Richterveld Cultural and Botanical Landscape World Heritage Site. As we know, this is one of those where we have the overlap between a TFCA and a World Heritage Site, similar to what we have in East Mangaliso and also in Ukatlamba also. And then there is a conservation development framework and an integrated management plan. And our EP branch have assisted in upgrading a number of tourism facilities within the area. The National Department of Tourism has commissioned a tourism master plan, and there's also been tourism marketing support to the Richterveld community. And also there's been the organizing of the Desert Nights event annually with Namibia and Boundless South Africa. And that basically provides a very unique experience of the area. And continuing in terms of confirming the status that it involves Namibia and South Africa, and that the MOU was signed in 2000 and the treaty in 2003, and Namibia is the coordinating country, and we are next in line. Then going on to the Lubambo Transfrontier Conservation Area, as I indicated, this one has 5 components related to it. And it is in extent of just over 4,000 square kilometers. There's about 8% that is in Swaziland, 66% that is in Mozambique, and 26% in South Africa. So the 5 TFCAs involve the Goba TFCA, which is between Mozambique and Swaziland. So there's only 4 portions in South Africa, which includes Nsubani-Pongola, which is between South Africa and Swaziland. And then there's also the Songimvelo Maloloja TFCA, which is also including South Africa and Swaziland also. And the Ponta do Oro and Kosi Bay, which is Mozambique and South Africa. And the Usutu Tembefuti TFCA, which is Mozambique and South Africa. Then this then starts to show the extent of the Lubambo Transfrontier on the northwestern parts of Swaziland, that is, and Mpumalanga borders on the western part. That will be the Goba TFCA and the Nsubani-Pongola TFCA. The Songimvelo Maloloja TFCA. And then going south of Swaziland and the northern portions of South Africa, that then will then indicate the Nsubani-Pongola area. It will also indicate the Usutu Tembe Futi TFCA and the Ponta do Oro Kosi Bay, which is basically on the northern parts of Ismangaliso Wetland Park. Then continuing on further details regarding the Lubambo TFCA to indicate that the protocols were signed at the Web Summit in 2000. Eswatini is presently the coordinating country amongst the 3 of us. In terms of the program, there is a trilateral youth program on the 3 countries to develop youth ambassadors for the TFCA. Also that there's been establishment of a community forum that includes local communities into the TFC structures and development of community development program. There's also been tourism marketing support similar to the other TFCAs as earlier alluded to. And just to mention that BirdLife, which is an NGO, has been very active in supporting community birding guides and social media campaign also. The Ecological Wildlife is also working on tourism plans for Endumo and Tembe Elephant Park to identify tourism opportunities for communities, and they can provide further details in that respect if required. And the next slide is therefore just to confirm that we have the 3 countries involved and that the protocol was signed in 2000. There's no need for a treaty. And Eswatini is presently the coordinating country. Then moving on to the Greater Mapungubwe Transfrontier Conservation Area, which was formerly known as Limpopo Shashe TFCA. It is just under 5,000 square kilometers in extent. Over half of that, 53%, is in South Africa within the Mapungubwe National Park. 28% is in Botswana, in the Northern Tuli Game Reserve. And 19% is in Zimbabwe on the Tuli Circle Safari. There's also some private lands and a portion of the Maramani communal land in Zimbabwe, and the map on the right-hand side then starts to show you the location of the Mapungubwe Transfrontier Conservation Area. This again is another Transfrontier Conservation Area that has an overlap with a heritage site. Then continuing in respect of the details of this TFCA, I've indicated the status of the agreements that are in place, and we are currently in consultation of the treaty, and Botswana is presently the coordinating country, and South Africa is next to take over. In terms of the programs in this TFCA, there's been a Tri-Nations training camp for children from all the 3 countries. This is held twice a year. And the management authorities in the room, they can provide further details. And the Maramani community in Zimbabwe was supported with event equipment to host that cross-border event. And also short-term opportunities when cross-border events are held, obviously. And there's also been tourism marketing support for this TFCA also. Then continuing on to the next slide, which then confirms the status in respect of the fact that it's the 3 countries. We are currently in finalizing the treaty. And once it is agreed to, it will be signed by the heads of states. And then Botswana is the coordinating country for this TFCA. Moving on to the next slide in terms of TFCA program meetings and events, to indicate that a lot of the work happens at a technical level in respect of wildlife management and law enforcement. These are also organized by the SADC Secretariat of the respective SADC country. So just to indicate some of the meetings that are held and the frequency thereof. So there is a political executive oversight of the, and also the DG bilateral or trilateral with neighboring countries that happens annually. And also that the executive participate in opening and closing ceremony and events that takes place also. We have had a successful Desert Nights event, but due to COVID that were suspended. However, this has now been planned for July of 2022, including the Tour de Tuli. The Tour de Tuli basically will include the Greater Mapungubwe TFCA. And also the executive and the technical staff members will also participate in official opening of projects. In respect of the SADC meeting, the ministerial and DG meetings in various fields of cooperation are held, including those related to environment, tourism, water, trade, and industry. And then the SADC Ministerial Committee on Wildlife and Law Enforcement takes place every 2nd year. Just also to indicate that in our case, the Deputy Minister is delegated in respect of TFCA coordination for South Africa. And then DARCO obviously on an ongoing basis will then hold bilateral meetings with neighboring countries also. Then just to indicate, next slide on funding opportunity, we know that COVID has greatly impacted the tourism operations negatively, as we know. And this in turn has affected the livelihoods of the communities that depend on this TFCA. However, there are funding opportunities through the SADC TFCA financing facility. And they've invited calls for proposals for projects to be implemented. I also just need to indicate that we work with some NGOs in respect of the management of these TFCAs that are also able to bring in their donor partners to assist in further developments within these TFCAs also. And as we know that within the department, DFFE, the EP program funds some of the programs as identified within these TFCAs, and the management authority, the implementing management authorities can then indicate some of those projects that have been funded in this TFCAs or have been submitted for funding also. I also need to indicate that we also run a global wildlife program that is funded by the World Bank and coordinated by UNEP, which basically deals with combating of illegal wildlife crime also. Then moving on to the next slide in terms of the priority areas that we are working on an ongoing basis regarding areas of harmonization of policies or legal framework in order to create an enabling environment for addressing conservation issues. that transcend the international borders. And this includes areas in respect of translocation of animals where required, control of alien invasives, disease control and fire management, and also regarding cross-border tourism operations in order to facilitate tourist activities across the borders. Another area is around using Tfca mechanism to reduce wildlife crimes. I've indicated one of the programs that we are currently implementing, but also to ensure that our respective law enforcement authorities are able to then align crime operations, the penalties and procedures for dealing with crimes, and organizing joint law enforcement operations, exchanging information on wildlife crimes, and development of cooperation agreements on joint protection, the conservation of key species such as our iconic species, rhino, lion, elephant. Another priority area relates to developing regional guidelines on the establishment and management of TFCAs to guide and harmonize processes. Another area is around developing and promoting marketing across borders in respect of tourism products, travel packages, itineraries, events, also that or campaigns that can be coordinated together. And also in the area of promoting investment in tourist facilities where there could be concessionaires for tourism operations, also supporting infrastructure in order to enhance attractiveness of these TFCAs. And also we are working on finalizing to roll out the implementation of an assessment tool that basically helps us in conservation management and to inform processes of instituting corrective measures, and also to facilitate implementation of community beneficiation initiatives and or programs, as we know that there are communities that are bordering these TFCAs, and they have to benefit in the operations of each TFCA. And then there's also the establishment of a sustainable funding mechanism. As I indicated, there is a TFCA financing facility, which is also an innovative financing mechanism through a public-private community partnership. Then moving on to the concluding slide, just to indicate that TFCAs, as we can see, play a critical role in conservation and management of shared ecosystems, and that TFCAs serve as nodes for rural development as they are located within rural areas and have a potential to create employment opportunities for surrounding communities, and also their involvement in the operations thereof, and that they offer unique cross-border experiences, and therefore they're an ideal platform for promoting tourism growth in the region, and that they are a key driver for regional integration and sustainable development. And they provide opportunities for synchronization of wildlife management activities such as game counting, fire management, translocation, etc. And then there's also they also provide opportunities for establishing community conservation areas and buffer zones that then contribute to expansion of these TFCAs, and that they facilitate the development of critical infrastructure, including the roads, these and access facility, tourist access facilities. I did indicate that the Sunny Pass Mokotlang Road has really opened up socio-economic development areas within the Maloti-Drakensberg TFCA, as we know. And then lastly, just to say that they facilitate cross-border tourism through packaging and promotion of products and or events that then offer unique and authentic cross-border experiences in TFCA, such as the Tour de Tule or the Desert Nights campaigns. Chairperson, I am going to conclude on this slide. The last two slides just include the acronyms that we use when we talk about the TFCAs. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and the committee.
Thank you so much, DDG, for the presentation. Colleagues, can I see a show of hands of whoever wants to interact with the presentation? That's why I'm seeing 2 hands. I know the others, yeah, they are coming one by one. And welcome, Honorable Phillips.
Thank you, Chair.
You have since settled now. And Honorable Singh, yeah, welcome, colleagues.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Thank you.
Okay, then we're gonna do it this way. It will be Honorable Bryant, followed by Kappa, followed by Phillips, followed by Singh, followed by Ganjo, and then the last one will be our Stembek. In that order. Over to you, Honorable Bryant.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you for the presentation. Chair, as you mentioned, this is certainly more of a kind of overall overarching presentation that touches on each of these Transfrontier areas. But I think it's a little bit thin on sort of detail in terms of specifics around each area. And I think perhaps there is an opportunity for us to get further presentations, as you mentioned earlier on, and really dig down into some of the key challenges that are being faced with the management and the long-term sustainability of these areas. It was mentioned during the presentation, in particular, challenges around funding and around ensuring that the requisite resources are in place, and also the intergovernmental relations that are required to ensure that these areas are run effectively, and that we also address issues relating importantly to poaching. I know we have spoken about that in the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier area, but it applies to other of these Transfrontier areas as well. Chair, one particular area that I would like to perhaps delve further into in future presentations, and perhaps we could also consider or contemplate an oversight visit there at some stage, is the Khalakhadi Transfrontier area. As you know, there is an incredibly old historic community of Kumani San people living in the southwestern border area on a 28,000 hectare piece of land, which was granted to them very graciously by government. But they do face many challenges. And along with the challenges they face in being able to sustain and practice their traditional customs and cultures, there are also many other pressures, particularly economic challenges in that area. And I do feel that this is a space that we should be looking more into. We have spoken about issues around human settlements and land claims in and around Kruger, but I think it is important for us to ensure that we give the same level of attention to the challenges faced by the Kumani San in the Khalakhadi Transfrontier area and that the park there. So that's my only point for now, Chair. As I say, it was a sort of quite a broad presentation. I know my colleagues, Honourable Phillips in particular, does have some more specific questions as well that she'll ask at a later stage. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much. Honourable Kappa, over to you.
Thank you, Chair. I'm also joining my colleagues in appreciating the input. It was quite elaborative. There's quite a lot of information. Just a few areas for me. One is that, Chair, from the very onset, you mentioned the issues of unemployment, poverty, and inequality. And I can see that a lot of that is happening in this process. But the weakness on our department is that they don't elevate this part, and it would seem as though they are doing nothing into this. So maybe in another situation, in another area, they can be able to say, all this is creating jobs in this way. All this is doing without is doing away with unemployment in this case, and inequality. Because I'm definitely sure that these are existing, but maybe there is no time or area in this case to elevate it. Secondly, they also talked about the involvement of communities, rural communities. I would like also to understand how much the traditional authorities are involved here with their communities. Maybe that also needs to be elevated. It's there, but it just needs to be elevated. Thirdly, Chair, there was where on the greater Mapungubwe, they mentioned that there's private land. I would just want to get clarity there that this private land, is it owned by the community, neighboring community, or is some private owner, like they do sometimes come and make business then own land? Just a clarity on that part. And the next one is that mode of working with the Department of...
Okay, you were fading. I suspect you had muted yourself. Can you repeat what you were trying to say?
The last one.
Yeah.
I was saying on the private land of the greater Mapungubwe, where there is land, I think it's in Zimbabwe, where the land is privately owned. I would like to understand the private owner, the nature of the private owner, whether it's the community or a business person, as sometimes it does happen. And then the next one was on the working relations, or the mode of working relations between ourselves here and the Department of Rural Development and Agrarian Reform. And the last one, Chair, is just a clarity on this part. I'm worried about the interchangeability of the word Khalakhadi and Khalakhadi. Just because I do have this understanding that Khalakhadi was a British corruption of Khalakhadi, and meant a lot in that distortion. And therefore, maybe that clarity would assist, so that even the people who interact with it, they should know that if maybe Khalakhadi is meant to mean Khalakhadi, whether at that time it was meant to dispose, to make people not to know that they are the Khalakhadi nation. I thank you, Chair.
Hey, very interesting one. Honorable Phillips.
Thank you so much, Chair. I'm not going to put my camera on because I'm still in the car on my way home. Thank you so much for the presentation. I appreciate it. The questions I have is on slide 1, it says that the management and meet often of the Transfrontier conservation areas. But how often is often, and what are the specifics of those meetings? And number 2 is, how is the budgetary contribution from each different country decided on for each different area? My third one is the laws in the conservation areas. Are they the same across the whole area, or are the laws of each individual country applied? And then on slide 15, there's pink areas that are marked as safari area. What does that actually mean? And then on slide 23, it said there is a need for a treaty to be signed. Why is that necessary? And what is the thinking behind it? And then slide 24 for the Sinai Pass roadworks. I'd like to know what the total budget was, how much has been spent so far, how many kilometers have been upgraded, and how many kilometers still need to be done, and what is the expected completion date? And then the slide on the Tri-Nation Camp for the Children, I'd like to know when they will resume, and also what happened to the budget that was budgeted for those camps in the years that they didn't take place. And then again, I'd like a lot more specifics, not just say we are developing tourism, we are doing this. What are they doing specifically, and what are the timelines for that? And then also the reviews on the website. You know, when visitors go there, what kind of reviews do you get? What kind of negative reviews do you get? What kind of positive reviews do you get? What are you working on for that? I know that Isimangaliso had a big problem with water supply in their ablution blocks. They're blaming Isabelo are blaming them. But at the end of the day, it doesn't matter who gets blamed. What matters is that people visited there in December and there was no water in the ablution blocks. So, yeah, I think when the presentations are made to us, we would like something a little bit with a little bit more flesh on than we could get if we just went onto their website and read there, because that's basically what I would have got from this presentation, I would have got on the websites of these particular Transfrontier parks. So thank you so much.
Thank you so much, dear colleague. Then Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. Good morning to you and our colleagues and everybody from our officials, those that are joining us. Thank you very much for the presentation. I know it must have taken a lot of time and effort to put this together to give us a broad picture of what's happening in the Transfrontier conservation areas. And some of these are treaties signed quite some time ago between different governments and different ministers representing those governments. I'd just like to know, with regard to these joint governance meetings that you talk about, you know, the frequency of these meetings, the challenges that one experiences, and does the department feel, I know this might be a diplomatic question, does it feel that every country or every participant is pulling in the same direction in ensuring that these TFCAs work in their respective areas? And then Honorable Bryant mentioned the Khalakhadi community. I think the same goes for the Ais-Richterveld community. I know in a different platform, we hear about the challenges being experienced by the Ais-Richterveld communities and, you know, what kind of benefits are the Ais-Richterveld communities getting? And my last question would relate to infrastructure. I know that the DG did say there were roads, etc., that were being constructed. I'd like to know what kind of funding, outside funding, international funding is available to promote these TFCAs, who controls the funding in terms of which country, and whether or not within our own country, some of the entities like KZN, Ecological, etc., Mpumalanga, do they get funding to also promote TFCAs, or it's all coordinated at a central level? Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, dear colleague. Honorable Gancho.
Thank you, Chairperson. Good morning, colleagues. Chair, let me also appreciate the presentation. And Chair, some of the things that I wanted to raise have already been raised by my colleagues, more especially on this issue of funding, because I wanted also to check what is the funding model for TFCAs, and is it only countries that are contributing towards the running of TFCAs? And what are the other financial streams that are available for the provision of the financial and material support TFCAs? The other one, Chair, I see that the development of critical infrastructure is one of the benefits of the TFCAs. Can they tell us what is the level of progress that has been made towards the realization of this benefit? And also, Chair, can they share us what are the challenges, if there's any, of course, that are faced by the department in sourcing the needed investment in infrastructure development, and how do they see department overcoming this challenge? Lastly, Chair, I also wanted to check what is the level of intergovernmental relations between DFFE and the Department of International Relations and Cooperation, and also including the trade and industry. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you so much, Honorable Mkono.
Thank you, Chair, and greetings to all the colleagues. You will pardon me, Chair, there is sometimes the background that is making some noise. It's there are people who are doing some renovations. Chair, want to join the colleagues on thanking the presentation. It's a good presentation, and it does assist, although we still need more time, as the chair have indicated, on the different frontiers now, taking them deeply. I want to support that one, that we get that one, that opportunity for each and every frontier that presents each and everyone in detail. Chair, my first question is on Ais-Richterveld managing the frontier Lubambo, which covers Eastern Cape, Free State, and KZN. My question on that one is on accountability. Is the accountability really happening at a level that makes all these three provinces to know and understand what is going on? The second one on that one, Chair, is the funding. Is Ais-Richterveld getting the funding from the three, besides the department, the three provinces, Eastern Cape, Free State, and KZN? And how do they manage that one? But also, Chair, whilst still there, I am worried. I'm sure we can get a chance to get more presentation, to get deeper onto this. I'm worried about Ais-Richterveld. I know it's not, it's with the KZN, but the way the management, I know there's no, they don't have a board, and there's an acting CEO. If they are really managing, but I'm sure, Chair, this one supports the fact that we need a further engagement on this one, so that we can also look at it together with Ismangaliso as an agency for the other part of the TFCA. In the presentation, Chair, there is an indication that the department is taking these TFCAs as nodes of rural development. I would like us I would like to know, how do we measure that rural development in terms of the response, in terms of the activities that are happening there in those areas? Do we have a measure, as the chair has indicated, that those communities are faced with the challenges of poverty, inequality, and the issue of job creation? What is the measure in terms of this particular one, and the response? Can we now say that these TFCs are really responding to that? And in terms of SMME benefiting from the TFCs, I would like, Chair, to get more information on that one. How do we assist the SMMEs, and what is the impact in that particular area? There's also the issue of establishing community conservation areas. How do we have a guiding policy if there is a need to enhance that one? Because I believe it will assist the communities to own those areas, to co-own those TFCs with the departments, and with the department and the provinces that are running those areas. If we can get more information on how they intend to do that one, and what is the target for this year, for the financial year, the financial year that we are in, and also the financial year that we are coming, that is coming, in terms of what is the target of the number of those community conservation areas that they intend to establish? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you so much, dear colleague. I think I've exhausted everyone who wanted to ask questions. I've Googled the Article 12 of the SADC Protocol on Wildlife Conservation and Law Enforcement of 1999. And then it provides for sanctions against parties which are not supportive of the protocol. DG and DDG, can you then clarify to us whether any of the state parties has been sanctioned or punished for not being supportive of the Transfrontier conservation area? Can you, as the department, also assure us as a committee that our other partners in Transfrontier conservation areas are doing their fair part in the spirit of the SADC Protocol on Wildlife Conservation and Law Enforcement of 1999 or any other subsequent protocol? And then the one also want to understand whether there were any discussions on reviewing the management of certain Transfrontier conservation area due to lack of proper law enforcement by some of our partners. Can you also then explain this to us better? Because I don't see it in your presentation. And then the other issue that one needs clarity on is what is the status of this SADC protocol on wildlife conservation and the law enforcement of 1999 relative to our Protected Areas Act and the Biodiversity Act. So I want you to share with us the status as it relates to our own laws. On slide 32, you talked about funding opportunities. I'm just implementing what some of the colleagues has raised with that relates to funding. And then you're saying COVID had an impact, and then however, funding opportunity through the SADC Tfca financing facility has invited calls for proposal for project to be implemented. Maybe you must share with us what projects are to be implemented and the funding. And then for how much is it? Somebody raised it. I just wanted to amplify that. Then going to your slide number 33 on priority areas. We know it's also dependent on other states, but the issue that I've raised initially with regard to the SADC protocol, you talk about harmonizing of policies and other legislative framework, use Tfca mechanism to reduce wildlife crime through alignment of penalty and procedures, develop regional guidelines. You mentioned them there in slide 33. But what I don't see there is the timeline, because it's like it's being left open-endedly to say this is what needs to be done, but you are not telling us by when and who's gonna do what. Maybe you will be able to explain that slide number 33 to us. Then the other issues that I want to also raise based on the holistic presentation now, the issue is as to whether there's been a comprehensive systematic evaluation of this Transfrontier conservation area to determine whether your conservation effectiveness following your proclamation relating to times before those specific South African national parks became part of these Transfrontier areas. We want to understand what has been the benefit of you entering into these MOUs, and then to understand whether you've actually done the evaluation of these issues to say, this is what we've benefited, or this is what we've made progress in terms of being in these agreements. And then the follow-up question to that effect is whether these conservation outcomes are better achieved now in our respective national parks than before the establishment of these TFCAs. The issue here, one want to understand the benefit that you have derived, or if it's best practices, something that you have then achieved out of entering on these agreements. Then the other issue, on the 18th of February, the Minister of Police, as he was doing his briefing, is on record saying that there's a need for better coordination and alignment between South Africa and its neighbors to combat cross-border crimes. And then Minister Khalakhadi said, the laws in the different countries make it difficult to pursue criminals across borders. And then he gave an example of cars found in Mozambique after being stolen from South Africa. And then the issue here, it says, if in SA, if you buy stolen goods, you are not innocent. But there, the buyers in the other country are always innocent, which means the car is on the other side and it's bought. You can't take it from that owner because the buyer is innocent. That's what the minister was actually saying. Then, having observed that, then I want to understand from you, DG, and the chief executive of SANPark, whether you do share this view of difficulties in pursuing criminals across borders due to the laws in different countries in the region, and then which other countries in the region with which we share the Transfrontier conservation areas have such laws that then prevent effective cross-border enforcement. And then can also then maybe understand whether our conservation law enforcement officers, for instance, your SANParks rangers and the police, conduct hotspot pursuit into other neighboring countries and vice versa. I hope I'm eloquent in terms of, and then if that is not happening, why not in relation to the hotspot pursuit? Because hotspot pursuit is that situation wherein the immediate and continuous pursuit by a police officer of a following suspect whose possible escape justify the failure of the officer to obtain a warrant before making an entry, search or arrest. So I'm trying to understand whether our conservation law enforcers are able to conduct those hotspots or hot pursuit into the other area, other neighboring countries. And also the other neighboring countries' law enforcement officers can also conduct hot pursuit in our own borders, within our own borders. So those are the issues that one wants clarity on. Over to you, DG and team, and then the chief executive acting. Mr. Dlamini, I think I've seen also Dr. Ziba, they are here. They will also respond to the question that relate to them. Over to you, DG.
Thank you very much, Chairperson, and thank you to the honorable members on a number of questions that have been raised by the members. Chair, I think we will do our best ability to respond to some of the questions. And when we look at the details of what is required, I think as a department, we will then make efforts to ensure that we provide these details which we could not necessarily respond to today in the detailed presentation on each Transfrontier conservation area. Honorable Bryant, I think I'm also going to be assisted by the DDG and the Chief Director. There's a Chief Director who is involved in coordinating all these Transfrontier in relation to the operations and also the engagements that we have with the various countries involved. I think we have noted.
Who is that Chief Director, DG? What's the name of the Chief Director?
Yes, Chairperson, we have Mr. Sidney Kosi, who presented even on the Limpopo, the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier. So he is involved on a day-to-day engagement. They will provide the details in terms of some of the responses. I think just to highlight also on the issue of the rural development, but also the issue of SMME development. Indeed, this is part of the benefits and some of the focus areas in going into treaties and also in the agreements in the various TFCAs which we have. One of the critical areas that I just want to make an example of, Honorable Chair and members, is that, for instance, there is on the infrastructure construction that was planned. We will be providing details around the various construction of projects. But one example that I want to highlight, which will also give an indication of resources that we also have to contribute to, and resources that the other parties and the other countries have to contribute to, and some of the sources of those resources in terms of the funds, where we source some of those funds. I will just make an example. I think in one of the TFCAs, the area as part of the program, we had an upgrading of the road, which between ourselves and Lesotho, in as far as the Maloti-Drakensberg TFCA. And this is a road which was created to ensure that issues of trade and also issues of tourism, we create those corridors between the two countries. We had a total cost of the project, of which then as South Africa, we then had to contribute a certain amount. I think then in the history of the project, there was a 40 million contributed in as far as this is concerned. And the balance was supposed to be secured by Lesotho. And we will then have to follow up with details in terms of then how then this project has actually progressed to date in as far as this program is concerned. So Chair, what I'm trying to elaborate here is that, yes, we've worked very closely with the various countries in the regions and those that are impacted on, and we have had these programs, and the details will therefore be provided. The other aspect, Chair, was also around the meetings, and I would want the Chief Director to deal with the issues, because I think Honorable Phillips is raising an issue around the management meetings and how we have budgeted for in terms of the operation of these TFCAs, and how then the various countries would have contributed. Some of the funds that have been utilized for the TFCAs have been funds that we would get from various regional funds, like for instance, your African Renaissance Fund, and other potentially, if then the respective countries are not necessarily contributing, we will then solicit funds within the funds that exist in the region. So the chief director and the DDG will cover these aspects. Chair, I think the management authorities are also present. We will be assisting in responding. Just to touch on the last point, Chair, which you have highlighted, where you were quoting Minister of Police with the difficulty of dealing with crime due to the laws that exist in the various countries. I think this is a matter that currently is occupying the JCS cluster. And as a department, we then also have a responsibility then to deposit some of those challenges so that we can solicit the JCS clusters support in dealing with this matter. So I think what I can highlight, Chair, is that yes, the statement is indeed true. And at a cluster level, with all the parties that are involved in the JCS cluster, these matters are being discussed to find ways in which then we can enable the enforcement and deal with these crimes that are actually affecting cross borders. The other one, Chair, that I want to also talk to is our collaboration domestically with other departments like your international relations, which is your DECO. We engage with them either on a bilateral, but also we engage with them at a cluster level to deal with these areas and issues whereby there may be international relations that will have then to be international relations agreements, which will then have to be also be implemented, and also ensure that we do actually recognize sovereignty of the other countries, but also at the same time, in line with those agreements, we are cooperating to deal with some of the challenges that are faced with the neighboring countries and the countries that are involved in these transfrontier conservation areas. Chair, I think at a high level, not necessarily going into the specifics, and we will definitely are committing to provide the specifics when we respond to the individual TFCAs and send through to the committee. I am going to request the DDG and the Chief Director to just elaborate on some of the issues that have been raised by yourself and the honorable members. Thank you, Chair. Let me hand over to the DDG. Thank you.
Thank you very much, DG, for providing context in responding to some of those questions. I just also need to further indicate that the ability and the need to meet at a technical level with these countries depends a great deal on the coordinating country. And as you would have seen, in most, if not all of these TFCAs, we are not yet the coordinating country. So Ais-Richterveld, Namibia is coordinating, Khalakhadi, Botswana is coordinating, Mapungubwe, I think it's Zimbabwe that is coordinating, and Lubambo is Swaziland, Eswatini that is coordinating. And then for Maloti-Drakensberg, there is not yet a coordinator allocated. And why I'm saying this is because that once a country is allocated as a coordinator in 2 years, they have to not only ensure that the respective
institutional governance structures meet, they also have to provide secretariat services, even for the technical level meetings that needs to be taking place in order to implement some of the programs. At country level, I can confirm that definitely that we are meeting with the implementing agent. We've even initiated meetings with our partner countries. I can confirm that Lubambo is scheduled for this month in March. So the three countries, Eswatini and Mozambique, there is a scheduled date to meet to discuss Lubambo. Maloti-Drakensberg, as I indicated, we met them already in February. We have discussed the possibility of requiring a treaty in that particular respect. The GLTFCA met in December of 2021, just to check on progress in respect of that. And I can confirm further that as South Africa, we are meeting again next week in Kruger National Park to further discuss matters related to the Transfrontier area, at least the northern portions of Kruger National Park. So there are ongoing meetings that are happening at a domestic level. We're quite active in that particular respect. I can also confirm that regarding the funding, the SADC financing facility is largely driven by IUCN, International Union for Conservation. We submitted a comprehensive list of funding needs for each of the TFCAs within the South African boundaries that was submitted in September last year. And these are still being considered, and we're hoping to receive a response. We can make a list of the projects that we have applied for funding for these respective TFCAs in the country. So I just thought, let me just paint that broad contextual picture in respect of the ability to meet on a regular basis to discuss matters related to these TFCAs and to implement some of the projects related to the TFCAs. There was a question from Honorable Kapa in respect of the land in Mapungubwe, just to confirm that that is privately owned. The only communal land referred to is on the Zimbabwean portion for the Maramani community that is across the border. But other lands within South Africa, that means with Mapungubwe, are mostly privately owned. I'm going to refer the detailed questions for each of the TFCA to the respective management authorities. In respect of budgets and contributions, I think the DG has covered that. Suffice to say that obviously on our part as South Africa, as part of our budget requirements, we get these budget needs submitted by the implementing agent and submit as part of our motivation to National Treasury to fund some of the operations in this TFCAs also. I'm sure Ais-Richterveld can provide details regarding the Sunny Pass Road and their involvement thereof, but this is a cross-border road for obvious reasons, and therefore it could be that even the South African National Roads Agency may have been involved in that particular, regarding the details that Honorable Phillips requested. And then Honorable Singh, I think I have responded to the question around the meetings and the challenges. I think just also for the community to appreciate that we are quite active, as can be expected as South Africa. Our partners may be moving a little bit slow, and therefore they will also depend on us nudging them to say, by the way, we need to be talking about this, especially because we are not the coordinators. But when we will be coordinating some of these TFCAs as a country, we will definitely ensure that all the meetings happen regularly and we meet to discuss the implementation actions and the challenges related to that. We will ensure that the necessary matters that require political oversight are then escalated to the Ministerial Oversight Committee also. Regarding outside funding or external funding, the Peace Parks Foundations, as we are aware, is one of those NGOs that has assisted us a great deal in funding some aspects of the TFCA infrastructure, etc., and strengthening capacity and the management of this, the governance of this. As I indicated, IUCN is also involved. In actual fact, DG met with the DG of IUCN about a week ago, and just to confirm our relationship with IUCN and the support that they can provide for the management effectiveness of the TFCA. So it's one of the agenda items or implementation actions that we will be running with IUCN, and we hope that they will be able to mobilize the necessary funding specifically to fund the management effectiveness of the 6 TFCAs that are involved. Just to confirm further that the GIZ is also involved, the German government, they have great interest in funding some of the activities related to the TFCAs. Then lastly, I'm going to refer the detailed questions related to each TFCA to the management authorities. But there was a question around the harmonization of laws and regulations, etc. And Mr. Nkosi can respond to that in respect of our own legislative provision. And there are instances where NEMPA in its current form may not be providing necessarily for TFCA management and operation in that respect, and I'm sure he will be able to respond to that one. If you are with your indulgence, Chair, I'm going to request Mr. Nkosi as the DG requested, and then I'm sure then we can then start with Sandparks and then go to Ais-Richterveld. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Nkosi, you can proceed.
Thank you very much, DG, and good morning, Chairperson as well as committee members. I'll respond to the specifications that DG has referred to myself. I think on the meeting of the various governance structures of the TFCA, Chair, we will also provide in addition the schedule of all the meetings that have been planned to that effect in terms of when they are happening, the venues that will normally have these particular meetings, as well as the stakeholders that we engage on those meetings. Just to also confirm that on the Greater Mapungubwe, the bigger part of the land that borders the Mapungubwe area, because currently we're busy with the process of the boundary modification. And what we have identified, Chair and honorable members, is that most of the land around that particular area is privately owned. And we are currently engaged in a stakeholder engagement process to ensure that they form part of the boundary modification of that area. But mostly the ownership of that land is in the private hands. And I think on the harmonization of legislations, policies, Chairperson and committee members, as it relates to how we interact or interface with our member states that we share some of the boundaries, it hasn't been an easy process at times because of the level of cooperation, responsiveness in some of the issues that we want to do. Hence, at times, we'll proceed as a country to ensure that we deal with the issues of law reform from our side to ensure that the current NEMPA Act, the National Air Management Protected Areas Act, in terms of our own expansion, includes over and above the protected areas, other land parcels that have got conservation value that connects other protected or conservation or biodiversity important areas, but also contribute towards this the hectareage increase. Hence, we've got our the National Protected Areas Expansion Act of which if you concur or check with our colleagues that we share borders with, they haven't entered that process. But we have made available such a document to ensure that they can cross-reference, to ensure that on the other side as well, they do have an expansion program on those issues. But most importantly, Chair, we subjecting also our TFCAs on the tool we call the Management Effectiveness Tracking Tool. That tool intends to check at a minimum level, what are the issues that the TFCAs has to deal with, ranging from the structural arrangements, the financing portion, the administration, the various specialties that are required in terms of the biodiversity space, as well as, are they pursuing any further ecotourism interventions that facilitates revenue generation so that it contributes towards financial sustainability. So that tool assists us to gauge the effectiveness of management of these TFCAs, and ultimately where we see gaps that have been identified, we introduce corrective measures to ensure that these TFCAs also recover, to ensure that they are in line with the other TFCAs that are performing well on other areas. The other questions, Chair, I think management authorities are well placed to provide the details, but safe to say, Chair, that in terms of cooperation based on the the SADC protocol and the various treaties and MOUs that we have, on the side of South Africa, we try our level best to implement what we said to do. It's just the interface with our colleagues, and at most times and instances, Chair, we have used diplomatic relations so that at an operational level, colleagues that are on site can phone the other colleagues on the other side to ensure that whatever issue or challenge that is faced and is escalating to the other side, colleagues at an operational level can engage. But we haven't implemented any sanctions, Chair, against any member state. It's just that we said on our side we'll do our best to ensure that we comply with the SADC protocols, as well as the applicable legislations and MOUs and treaties that are in place, Chair. Lastly, to say, Chair, that whether the entering into cooperation agreements with the various member states that we share borders with, whether it has translated into the actual change of people's life that borders these particular spaces, Chair. The report that we have, it only deals with what we said to do in that particular financial year on both sides, ourselves as well as the member states that we are in agreement with, and tables an annual report that gives whether how much have we achieved in terms of what we said to do, and what are still areas that are still outstanding for further attendance, so that we can deal with those issues that are posing challenges. And I think, Chair, it's you have made a specific request that I think when we go to the next cycle of reporting as well, we need to, based on the inputs from management authorities that are managing the sites, we can draw that input just to demonstrate exactly the projects that have been developed, how much jobs they have been translated, how much employment has these interventions translated into, and expand on those beneficiations that some of the communities have entered into, and so that we cover that scope to demonstrate that these treaties and MOUs are not just paperwork, but they have been translated into tangibles that we can also demonstrate to the committee as well. Thanks, Chair. I'll leave it at that and give opportunities to the management authorities to just reflect on the specifics that have been raised as per side. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Can Ais-Richterveld start?
Thank you, Chairperson. Greetings to you, Chairperson, honorable members, and my colleagues. Tsikelelo Dlulane, the acting CEO of Ais-Richterveld. Chairperson, I'm with my colleagues, Mr. Padima, and the colleagues that are doing management of the TFCA. Mr. Jodo is with us. I will first take, Chairperson, the issue of the road, because one was involved on that particular one, and the details of the actual work and the dates and the frequency and the contributions. I'll request Mr. Padima, with your permission, Chairperson, to actually add more detail on that. Chair, the road was developed from our side, in the South African side, from Heimville towards the Sunny Pass by the Department of Transport. At the time, there was also talks, Chair, of upgrading the border post there at Sunny Pass. I can confirm, Chairperson, that most of the departments that are relevant, especially Department of Public Works, was directly involved, especially with the issue of the development of the border post. But that particular project, Chairperson, did not end up being concluded as it was planned. So I think one would possibly need to find out from the side of the Department of Public Works, but safe to say, Chair, the department at the time was DIA, which is DFFE now, had also made provisions through the, I think it's now SRPP. It was SRPP at the time, which was providing funding for some of the projects. There was funds that were made available, but because the implementation ended up not happening, so that project from the side of the department was actually, suspended, pending, the engagement further on the development of that particular border post. I can also confirm, Chairperson and members, that there was also some contribution that was made by the country, South Africa, to Lesotho to develop their side of the road, because it was also viewed as a route that could actually shorten the distance between Bloemfontein towards the Pietermaritzburg and forward to Durban, especially in the KZN area, which would then improve our trade and economic activities between the country of Lesotho and South Africa and the province of the Free State. So there was, I think, if I'm correct, if I remember correctly, Chairperson, about 40 million that was contributed, and it was actually done through the it was actually the Deputy Minister at the time, Deputy Minister Rejoice Maputafatsi, who was the one that was tasked to actually hand over that. And one was there because we had been requested to accompany her to actually hand over that within to the Lesotho government. So there has been that development. The one issue, Chairperson, I can confirm is that the road was developed right down to the foot of the mountain in the Sunny Pass area. It has not yet been developed right up to where we had planned towards the border post. So that is what is still outstanding, Chairperson. For the purposes, Chairperson, of detail in terms of the frequency of the meetings as requested by the members, as well as the issue of the contributions and frequency of that, with your permission, Chair, may I request Mr. Padima to actually give detail on that, so that at least there could be clarity on how are we faring with regards to that particular issue. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
Mr. Padima, over to you.
Good morning, honorable members. Thank you, honorable chairperson, for the opportunity to speak to these issues. I have listed some in chronology of how I have noted them. They may not be in the order that they were asked. I'd like to begin, honorable chairperson, with the comment that was made by the honorable chairperson in relation to the review of management authorities of these properties to determine the efficacy of managing these properties. And I will begin perhaps in relation to how we determine how effective we are in terms of managing these properties, and saying that in particular in the Maloti-Drakensberg Park. As the honorable members would know that it has both the Lesotho side and the South African side, with other areas in the Eastern Cape and in the Free State. With respect to establishing whether a protected area or a park is managed effectively, we have a tool that we are using, which is the Management Effectiveness Tracking Tool. And we look at the entirety of the component that is managed within South Africa, and particularly in this respect within KZN. And that is the 230,000 hectares of a piece of the entire park that we are managing in KZN, which is called the Ukasham. We undertake periodic assessment annually, and we can report here that in terms of accountability of how that is managed effectively, we periodically submit reports to the department, the national department, to assure the department about how effective the management of the park is. There are a number of indicators to ensure that we do not pick and choose in terms of how we assess the efficacy of our management. So we do have that report, and we can even show the report in terms of how we manage the park. There's a question that is being asked also by Honorable Chunu in relation to accountability of Ukashamba, in relation to the management of the park. One ought to say that the management, including the funds that are put into the management of the park, are not managed separate to how we manage the entire, in that we are funded through, as members would know, the provincial legislature and
Is it only me who can hear?
I can't hear.
You can hear him as well.
We can't hear you.
We can't hear you either.
Can the acting CEO talk to him to get a better connection, or we could then be moving to Sandpark?
I will do,
Mr. Padim, are you okay now?
I will do, Mr. Honorable Chairperson. I will ask him to come to my office. Thank you, Chair.
So, okay. So in the meantime, Mr. Dlamini, are you ready?
Yeah. Thank you very much, Chairperson, and good day to you and honorable members. I have with me a Sandparks team made up of the Sandparks executive as well as the regional team. There are 3 executives that will handle the question that has been asked by yourself as well as the honorable members, Chair, which is Dr. Tsiba, Mr. Mukwena, as well as Mr. Coleman. But in the meantime, I will hand over to Dr. Tsiba, then followed by Mr. Mukwena. Thank you very much, Chair.
Honorable Chair, can I speak? Can I continue?
Wait. You were told you were going to go to the CEO's office. We are already busy with Sandparks. Just wait a bit. Dr. Tsiba?
Okay, no,
Thank you very much, Chairperson and honorable members and colleagues. We, Chairperson, want to perhaps speak at a high level on the issues relating to cooperation around conservation. There's a lot of work happening in that space, but I think we will provide updates when we come back to report on progress to the committee. What I wanted to highlight perhaps as one example, Chairperson, is that if you look at a transfrontier conservation area like Mapungubwe, we have animals that move across the border between Botswana, South Africa, Zimbabwe. There is an elephant herd of between 800 and 1,000 elephants that grazes or moves around these three areas. And whilst we appreciate this, we also recognize that when you have that many elephants in one herd moving across an area, they usually have a substantial impact on the vegetation and the ecosystems there. So in a place like Mapungubwe, for instance, if you drive around parts of the park, you see Mopane woodland that has turned into more like shrubs rather than, you know, the normal Mopane trees that are tall and mature. And these shrubby ecosystems basically reflect the frequency with which elephants are returning to those areas and the impact that they have. So what we have done is that through our planning and through resources from our Park Development Fund, we identify areas that we consider to be sensitive areas, especially along the riparian areas. And we try and fence off these areas so that we allow them time to recover. We have also noted significant impacts on Baobab trees, and as a result, if you go to parts of Mapungubwe, you will notice that there are Baobab trees that we have put net wire around their trunks or the tree trunks, because these elephants, they ring back Baobab trees, and after some time, these trees get damaged, get infected and die also as a result of both inability to have moisture absorbed and fed into the tree, but also like due to disease, and there are also potentially compounding effects of climate change. Another area, what we've seen, which is a positive cooperation, is that sometimes, in a park in Mapungubwe, we have a small rhino herd, and they move around sometimes, and they cross the border to Mozambique. To Zimbabwe or to Botswana. And when they cross the border, we are able to call our counterparts and inform them that animals have crossed, and they then do the monitoring of these animals on the other side for us. So, but when we come back, Chair, we will share more details about areas of cooperation. There are areas or parks, for instance, like Kruger, where we see, for instance, animals like lions that cross and cause, human-wildlife conflict in the communities inside the Limpopo National Park. But also, we have animals like elephants that we would like to see utilizing a wider, home range that sometimes are not, getting to some of the areas in the broader Transfrontier conservation area. So these are more the conservation-related issues that we deal with, Chair, that we hope will also form part of future updates for the committee. Thank you very much. I'll hand over to Mr. Mukwena.
Okay. Thank you, Dr. Zimba.
Thank you, Chair, and good afternoon, honorable members and colleagues. I will touch.
You, but I can't see you at all.
You can't see me,
Chair.
So
whatever.
I think it's the light. It's the light behind me, Chair.
Okay.
Yeah, but I can see you.
Sure, proceed.
Thank you, Chair. I'll be quick. I just wanted to touch on a few things which we are doing, especially in some of the TFCA, especially in Khalakhadi. There was a question which was asked around cultural practice. So we've got the Komani-Sen there, and as you know, that they were inscribed, that area was inscribed as a cultural landscape in recognition of the Komani-Sen. So all cultural activities of the Komanisan is allowed to be performed in that national park. We have now set aside around 30 million rand to build a lodge for the Komanisan community, and that lodge will be managed by jointly with the Komanisan. Sun Parks will provide the expertise to oversee how the lodge is managed, but the majority of the people and management will be Komanisan, and that's 100% funded by government. So I just wanted to cite that when it comes to Khalakhadi. Another question which was asked around the name Khalakhadi. When the TFCA was sort of initiated, I think the park in the South African side, it was Drakensbeck National Park, which it comes from the animal there. And on the other side in Botswana, it was Kgalagadi National Park, but it was agreed that the proper name would be Khalakhadi, which is the name for the TFCA, which basically means salt pans. And thirdly, there was a question, I think, from Honorable Singh around Ais-Richterveld National Park and in terms of the benefits which the community gets there. That's one national park, honorable members and colleagues, which fully and totally belongs to communities. Sun Parks there is just a management agent for that national park. So we pay a rental fee to the communities on annual basis. There's a joint management board committee which consists of community members, where the Sun Parks employees or ourselves, we report in terms of progress or implementation of the management plan of that park. So oversight of the functioning of that national park is sort of provided by community members. And some of the rights which they have, because it is their national park, they've got like grazing rights in the national park, which is rare to find in some national parks because it's domestic sheep which they use there. So I just wanted to cite that national park totally belongs to sort of communities, if I can put it that way. Lastly, Chair, I think you asked about the issue of haute pursuit, especially on the TFCAs where we are bordering countries where there's sort of cross illegal activities. Just to share with the communities, what we are talking about. If you look at Golden Gate and you look at Mapungubwe, the type of crime we are talking about is basically trespassing and cigarette smuggling and stock theft. So if we have to arrest a person who comes from another country, we definitely work jointly with our counterparts on the Zimbabwean side or in the Botswana side. And if we arrest a person, we therefore hand over that person to SAPS with defense. I can share with the committee that I think a few months ago we've seized illegal cigarette around Mapungubwe to the value of 3 million rand. So we are not operating in isolation in these areas at the ground level. Thank you, Chair.
Mr. Badima, are you ready now?
Honorable Chair, I'm ready.
Yes.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chair, again. Let me try and get my video coming on. It's giving me some issue. Okay, thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I had started, in fact, I was on the issue about the question that was raised by Honorable Mchunu in relation to accountability, and I had thought it prudent to begin with that question necessarily because I think that it's associated with other issues that have been raised by other honorable members around funding model, around infrastructure development, but also around the frequency of meetings I had indicated that we have a mechanism, particularly on the South African portion of the Transfrontier Park. As honorable members would remember that the park itself, the entire Maloti-Drakensberg Park, is divided, as I had said, into Lesotho and South Africa. So in the South African portion of the Maloti-Drakensberg Park, we actually have a coordinating body or unit in the form of a Maloti-Drakensberg Transfrontier program. That program coordinates work that involves the work that we're doing in the Transfrontier Park on the South African side, meaning that it coordinates work in relation to what we are doing in that space, interacting with the Eastern Cape, with KZN, and with the Free State, to ensure that the work around the projects and programs are being undertaken to ensure that not only the biodiversity in the Transfrontier area within South Africa are managed properly, but also that there is socio-economic benefit arising from our management of this area. And as the acting CEO had said earlier on, we actually even have the manager that works around coordinating that Transfrontier Park in South Africa here with us as part of this this committee. And in terms of how we fund that that coordination in South Africa, is that there is contribution from different departments and entities. For instance, there is contribution from the Eastern Cape and its own entity there, Eastern Cape Parks. There would be contribution from KZN Wildlife and the provincial department, which is a co-signatory to the agreement that brings us together, including in the Free State as well. So we, as all the entities that are involved in South Africa, put money in the kitty, including, excuse me, SANParks, by the way, also contributes, annually a figure that enables us to be able to coordinate the work around the Maloti-Drakensberg Park in the South African component. It is chaired, that coordination work, by the department, as the department would have reported. So although the actual Transfrontier area in its entirety, that is including Lesotho and South Africa, is not led by any coordination, the South African component does have a coordination of a sort, which is supported by the department. I think that was necessary to just indicate, particularly also in relation to the model that has been used to be able to fund that, honorable members. There also was a question around the involvement of traditional authorities and community beneficiation. I can assure honorable members that in terms of what work we do in the South African component, we believe strongly in the partnership and cooperation between management authorities and traditional authorities that find themselves within the areas of conservation. And so we constantly, through our management operation, interact with traditional councils and traditional authorities to make sure that we not only consult, but they form part of the co-management of the areas that falls within their space. So there is cooperation in terms of that. And I think that as Honorable Bright had requested, that where perhaps in the future what we could do, we could provide a more comprehensive presentation for each and every site, at least for Ais-Richterveld, that would be the two sites, that would be the Maloti-Drakensberg Park and the Lubambo Park, where we involve, to say to what extent are we involved, but also to enumerate a number of projects that we have and the actual beneficiation models that we have and how communities are benefiting from those programs. I believe honorable members that have dealt with some of the issues. There was an issue about the frequency of meetings. Those are coordinated through, as I was saying, the component, the coordinating component in South Africa. So through that structure, we are able to convene what we call bilateral coordinating committee. Those are meetings that include South African managers and the Lesotho component, that is the Sihlabathebe park component of the Maloti-Drakensberg park. So we're able to meet through those bilateral meetings between the two countries. That includes other bodies in South Africa, but also within South Africa, we have what we call the National Coordinating Committee that is also chaired by the National Department in respect to managing that. And then there are other issues in Lubambo, and I can confirm what honorable members have raised as a concern around crime. And I think that was the honorable chair to say that there are issues around crime and the ownership of vehicles once they've jumped the border. I can confirm that we still have some issues in relation to that. What we have done on our side is to work closely with the tactical joint operations, that is the SEPs, to provide assistance, particularly in areas around Tembe, Elephant Park, where there's this cross-border criminal activity that is happening there with the stealing of vehicles and so on. That we provide assistance to the SEPs and the law enforcement entities within the province that works around the criminal activities that happens there. We also do have programs in Lubambo, including the tourism. We recently approved the tourism strategy, and we have some challenges. Would like to look around how we unlock value, much more value for communities there. And we believe that once we get some of the plans implemented fully, and the ability to interact with our counterparts there, without the some issues that we have around, for instance, the management of the entire park. That includes the Mozambique part as a single unit. We then would unlock some benefits from that. But we're working on coordinating that. We have the assistance there also of peace parks that we work closely with to ensure that we unlock as much benefit as we can to benefit the communities that are adjacent to the parks. I think that is as much as I can say in relation to that. I could also take any other questions in case I have not addressed it. Thank you, honorable members.
Thank you, Mr. Badima. Colleagues, do we have, no. You're using the CEO's microphone, I suspect. Then you can mute it. Then, colleagues, is there any other follow-up issues? So they've adequately responded to your issues. Can I get a nod, a yes or no? Okay. Yeah. Okay. Then it brings us to the Honorable Brian, send this up. Yes.
Thanks, Chairperson. Chairperson, I did have another couple of follow-up questions that relate to the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier area and one or two other questions. I wonder if it's possible if I can maybe send those through to the officials via the Secretariat, just in the interest of time, and then
you still have time. You still have time. They can respond to you now, yeah? This meeting is expected to adjourn at 12:30. Are you ready?
Sorry, yes, Chairperson, I am. If you just give me 1 sec, I just want to. Yeah, so Chair, the questions I was going to ask in particular, there was a report from 2003, and it was relating to elephant bulls and the sort of practice around trophy hunting of elephant bulls. And I know they were going to look at the hunting quotas for those elephant bulls between Botswana, Zimbabwe, and South Africa. I just want to find out where that currently sits and whether that is still occurring, or if you know it's something that is aiming to be prevented. And then in terms of the Endumo Game Reserve, which is in the Lubambo TFC, we've heard that there are some challenges there with people who've entered that area illegally. Are we able to just get a response in terms of that? Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Can we get those responses, please?
Chairperson, it's the DG here. Can I request Sydney to just respond, but would propose that if the details are not adequate for this meeting, we respond in writing, given the history of reports being referred to in the question. Thank you, Chair.
Okay. Can the Chief Director respond as directed by the DG?
Thank you. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair. I think we'll appreciate those questions in writing so that we can respond appropriately as indicated and advised by DG as well. Thanks, Chair.
Okay. Honorable Brian is an old hand, I suppose.
Yes, Chair, my apologies. I'll lower it now.
Okay. Under the circumstances, it does then bring us to the end of our meeting with the view that those outstanding questions will be responded in writing. Let me then thank you, the acting CEO of Ais-Richterveld and the colleagues, the acting CEO of SANParks and all the senior management team that are with you, DG and the colleagues that you are attending this meeting with, including the Deputy Minister. Also to thank you, colleagues, for coming in numbers that we process this matter. As I've indicated, I think this the matter is ongoing, like we've done with the Greater Limpopo Transfrontier Conservation Area. We are going to have a slot in the next quarter, wherein then all the details, you'll both come with the relevant provincial departments and the 3 implementation agents, then to come and brief the committee fully on the progress. But I just want to thank you for making time. And this meeting gets adjourned as you will be enjoying the remainder of the day and the weekend. Thank you so much, colleagues. Thank you.
Chairperson, my colleagues.
Thank you.
Thank
you, Chairperson.
Thank
you.
Bye.
Bye. Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye.
Bye, bye-bye, bye-bye.